Welcome everyone to this joint GREYTalk IO talent session. It's really amazing to have you here, even if you couldn't travel to Geneva. We've had very nice sessions in 2018, 2019, and in 2020 we had one. It was really very nice, and we enjoyed it really very much. Not only in GREYTalk, but the Geneva Welcome Center and other participants. They are really happy to receive you every year. So hopefully then before the end of the year, you will be able to come. And if not, hopefully next year. And so, yes, indeed. And thank you very much to Manuela. It was Li Yung Cheng and Wenyi Yuan. You have been exchanging many emails to coordinate the activity, and you finally chose a subject to discuss in this. You all want to make some presentations, and the theme for today is communications in time of crisis, exchanging views between Chinese and European citizens, and how the government manages information and pandemic. I had a question already, maybe we can discuss later. Why only the government? Because it's the government and others, of course, the government rules, but of course. And I wonder if you would like someone, you Manuela, or you Li Yung Chen, would like to introduce our speakers today. We have 3 presentations.
Yeah, I will leave our friends to introduce the presenters because I do not know them personally. The only thing I know is that we will have 3 PowerPoint short presentations that are meant to provoke the exchange on both sides, your side and our side. So it's certainly not an academic sort of debate that we are having here, but rather a dialogue to compare experiences and perspectives, right? And it's up to you to present yourself and also to decide if you want to have a debate after each presentation, or if you want to have the question and answer and comments all together at the end of the 3 presentations. It's up to you as you wish. Over to you. And to improve the audio, please close your mic while you are not speaking. So that improves the audio in case we have more people joining. So I will close my mic now for now.
Okay, thank you, Manuela. Actually, we invite our co-host, who is Tingyu, and she has already introduced herself. And I will definitely give the floor to her and let her to introduce our presenters. Please, Tingyu.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shana, for your warm opening introduction, and also thank you for your invitation for the excellent, interesting discussion about risk communication during the pandemic crisis. I made a self-introduction. My name is Tingyu. I currently study in University of Geneva at MEIG program. So it might be my 3rd time to participate in the events by GREYTalk. Very thankful. And hopefully, Geneva is already coming to the end of the first wave of COVID-19, and China started early and also quickly ended. So for the contemporary success, I believe it's quite thanks to the whole society's cooperation and understanding, especially the citizens and the communities. So the risk communication and community engagement make great sense here. To go to the first exciting round, we will have the pleasure to get our 3 Chinese representatives in to exchange the views on how the Chinese government manages the information on pandemic. Firstly, I want to invite Jasmin Jia. She is the co-founder of Spark Mutual Aid Community for Overseas Students. She is also a volunteer of Sino-EU Green Ribbon, assisted in the collection and distribution of medical supplies. Hello, Jasmin. May I have you in?
Hello everyone. I feel honored to participate in today's GREYTalk. I'm Jia Ximing, and you can call me Jasmin. I'm a junior student majoring in politics and administration. Yeah, and well, as you already know, I'm a co-founder of a mutual aid committee, and all of our members are university men, so it's a very young group, and we sent about 5,000 masks to the overseas students, and I feel really happy that I can help them because I always because I'm interested in the international security, and I always wonder if the world will getting better because we face a lot of stress in international relations, international security. But when I do something voluntary works, and I'm helping others, I feel more secure. I think the world will getting better if people always do some little good things, and everything will be fine. Everything will get better. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so would you like to share with us how the residents in China get information during the pandemic? How public service channel the general public?
Just a second. Can you see this PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll begin. The topic of my talk today is China's information dissemination during the pandemic. To begin with, I want to show the main areas that I think governments should expose information during the pandemic. Well, the first one is the basic information, including basic data statistics, analysis index information, and risky suggestive information. I think this kind of information can bring a clear and direct understanding about the pandemic to public. So very important. And the second one, I think, is the response information. It can take public's fear away by telling them that we have enough resource and capability to fight against the pandemic. And the third one, I think, is the information about people's livelihood, including traveling and supplying of necessities during the pandemic. The Chinese government's suspended some public transportation in order to restrict people's travel, which has played a great positive role in preventing human-to-human transmission. But it also brought some inconvenience to purchase of the daily necessity. So, well, to coordinate the needs of the governments and the needs of individuals, Chinese government has arranged some special buses to deliver food to people who are restricted from traveling. Well, I think it's quite considerate. Yeah. And the last one, I think we should publish the market information, because that kind of information can protecting customers from being ripped off. Yeah, and I think that's well. So in such an information age, I think the development of e-governments has created conditions for the opening and dissemination of the information online, and Chinese governments also developed some platform to diminish their information, like macro-blog on government's affairs and e-government's WeChat. Yeah, but as you can see, during this pandemic, our civilization in China, civilian in China, we get information in those diversity or unofficial channels. So so what I'm thinking is that the unofficial diversity information release subjects promotes the difficulty of accountability and create the condition for the rumors. official media in China, which deeply involves in social networks, videos, articles, and other websites, play a great role in guiding the public opinion. So during this pandemic, in this emergency situation, in dealing with rumors, the governments of China mainly use official media to regularly dispel the rumors. But in my view, China needs to further improve the information dissemination system in crisis management, because information plays an important role in crisis management, and accurate information contributes to effective crisis management. At present, the regular way to dispel the rumors is only an emergency measure. I hold the idea that the long-term solution is to establish a sound public crisis information processing system, and it's more convenient and progressive system. Yeah, I think that's all.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Jasmine, for your excellent sharing. May I ask our audience, would you like to raise some questions here to discuss or some comments?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we can raise some questions here to discuss.
Mohan.
Yeah.
Yeah, just three points. I don't know if this will be covered in the other presentations, and if they will be, you don't have to answer them now. But if not, just a very quick one. In your very first slide, you said the government should be doing this information sharing rather than it is doing. Is it doing it, or it's just an idea that it should be doing it? I didn't understand that. My second question is, are there also daily press briefings given by people in the medical or in the community services to inform people daily for those who may not have internet access or WhatsApp, the general population through radio shows, radio talks, TV, newspapers? And the third one, you talked about rumors. You said they do it regularly, but how quick is regular? Because rumors tend to get out of hand very quickly, and opinions are formed usually unjustified, but they happen very quickly. So how quickly is that done? These are my three points. I raised them because I have something to share in terms of Singapore. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I want to say that the information that I said the governments should disclose. Actually, Chinese governments are disclosing this. They are doing this. I think they are doing pretty well. But I also think China can build a more convenient and popular community system between the governments and the public dealing with this pandemic. Yeah. So the information they should disclose, and they are disclosing, but where I think there are kind of lack of communication between the governments and the public. Yeah, and about how does civilian in the places don't have internet, how does they get information? We have some traditional ways to like radio or some newspaper. Yeah, and I think there is another speaker will talk about this kind of things later. Yeah, and yeah, I think is that all the questions? Have I answered all the questions?
So
Thank you. Yes, you did, because it's huge. China is huge compared to Singapore. So in terms of quelling rumors, is an very important government channel to quell rumors. Is extremely important in a large country before this information gets out of hand. So thank you. Yes, that was okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else? May I ask a question? Yes, it's a little bit a follow-up of what Mohan said. I was wondering how fast was the reaction of the government and what are the means to react really very rapidly. And also, I was very impressed in some of the slides that you showed us that there is e-government, e-publicity, e-communication, e-everything. The only thing is that seniors and older people, they are not actually connected in most of the world. I don't know in China. So when you privilege information through modern systems, you get all those people without any kind of information. And the problem is that the COVID-19 affects mostly elderly people. So the most in danger are the less informed or discriminated in many countries. I don't know what is the situation of elder people in terms of communication and receiving the communication in China.
Yeah, I have for volunteer experience during this pandemic, and one of this experience is I become a member of my community's COVID-19 provision team. Yeah. So about how does the old people get information? It is very very classical or traditional that our team member, our volunteer, will send message to their flat, will knock their door and tell them what you should do, what you need to prepare, and what kind of things you wear, and you can be more, or you can be safer. And we also try to teach them how to use the iPhone or iPad or something that they can get information on the website. Actually, for example, like my grandparents, they can use the mobile phone. They can search something they want in the website. So yeah, I think the old people living in the city, they can get information online, but I'm not sure that all old people living in the countryside, they can get information online. So I think there's some limitation in my presentation, and I hope that other speakers can talk more about how that countryside old people get information. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
Yes, so actually we already raised many interesting questions and topics. We can elaborate later. And our next speakers, she will introduce some government information channels to the general public. So maybe she will answer our questions. Let's go to the next speaker, who is Haomin Zhang. She is a volunteer channeled online SOS messages from Wuhan and also raised medical supplies of $24,000 for hospitals in Hubei Province. So we want to hear more elaborated experience of Haomin Zhang, and please also share with us your topic today.
Yeah, hi everyone. Please prepare for my slides. Okay, I think it's almost ready. All right. So let's get started. I'm Zhang Haomin, and just like our hostess introduced, I'm a volunteer serving to oblige those in need in Wuhan from information assistance. Actually, it is an online volunteer group collecting SOS posts on the internet and reporting the messages to official departments and local volunteers. I'm glad to be here with you today. When I get down to preparing for this talk, I was reminded of the US presidential election in 1960. That year witnessed the first TV debate in the US history and also witnessed the discrepancy brought by the medium of radio and television. More radio audiences voted for Nixon. His voice sounded reliable, but more televiewers cast their ballots on Kennedy, who won for his energetic appearance. This history epitomizes my topic for today's talk. A medium counts ineffective official information diffusion. I'll share with you three couples of interesting contrasts I observed when serving as a volunteer, and try to explain the mechanism behind the phenomenon from the perspective of media and mass communication. And the first contrast is between the village health loudspeaker and the online bulletin board. Both of them were used to release official information. Early stage, just think that. Did I mute it? Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, fine. And the first contrast, I mentioned, is between the village health loudspeaker and the online bulletin board. Both of them were used to release official information. At the early stage of outbreak, grassroots officials used a loudspeaker, as in the picture, to give public warnings to villagers to stay at home to reduce risks of infection, which is proved to be more effective than online bulletins. Such traditional broadcasting medium epitomizes the cultural memory of authority, I think. In China, the village health loudspeakers have an image bearing hallmarks of the traditional authority and social networks in rural China, where people are deeply engaged in customs, rituals, and family bonds. Mobilization via such medium may hence be manifestly effective, even in the digital age. And another advantage of such medium is that it can produce a field of the sense of presence. Village health loudspeakers create a field where people listening feel like they are invited to a face-to-face lecture, which provokes more actions. Similarly, but with more novelty, drones are applied by the government persuading its citizens into self-quarantine. And for the second part, digital mediums, especially location-based technology, enable brand new forms of information sharing. One example is the online real-time map of patients in need of help in Wuhan. The illustration there is the online SOS messages we receive. Different colors of dots match different types of patients. The red dots refer to the critical patients, and the blue dots refer to the patients with mild symptoms and things like that. Rescue teams are entitled to have access to details about the patient. And in a broader way, such technology also enhances visibility of information. What it means, what once gathered around can be collected now. People can search whether they were in the same compartment of flights with virus carriers, which news are actually rumors, and what protective equipment is available. Actually, by the way, this point, these examples are have been mentioned by Jasmin. And so Information are exhibited in digital platforms in a fresh and user-friendly way. But meanwhile, with the spread of digital technology, yes, the digital divide seems to be widened by media. Poverty-stricken or elderly people, senior people may get slimmer chance to be rescued with online SOS messages, grab, and occupy public attention. And this means in the virus outbreak, the gap between information out and information out not could cost lives. Yeah. Another instance is that in China, in some China areas, students have to ride a camel to seek Wi-Fi signals to take online courses during the epidemic. This dilemma, this problem requires a supplement of offline work or traditional media to connect the needed. It is my view. And so on that final note, I'd like to end with some tips based on the points above. First, recollect the cultural memory of traditional channels. And second, create a field amplifying the sense of presence. And the third, visualize information and provide information buffet, just like the online real-time map or the rumor shredder. And the fourth is strike balance between traditional media and new media, online and offline. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
So any question here or comments, please?
Yes, I would like to comment on the utilization of loudspeakers and drones, which I find fascinating and certainly extremely effective as a practical way really to reach particularly the areas, the villages that are, as you say, more used to traditional authority and that sort of communication. I am just imagining the utilization of loudspeakers and drones here in Europe, for instance, in, well, not only in big cities, but also in small villages. I don't know why, but the first image that came to my mind is in France or in Spain or Italy, where this kind of loudspeakers or even drones today would be automatically linked in a mental connotation to something which is a authoritarian model. The loudspeakers were used during World War II to communicate bad news, to communicate the authority, and be automatically linked to the military occupation. And the drones very recently were used, particularly in Italy some days ago, some weeks ago, to monitor the quarantine, to monitor people going out of in the streets and to make some sort of robotic surveillance. And the reaction was absolutely awful. I mean, you cannot imagine how many not only criticisms but also jokes on the utilization of the drones by the authorities immediately exploded in the social media, the newspapers and everybody, so that the drones technology was very quickly abandoned because there was no way to make it seriously, to make it happen the way it should be. So it's a mindset really that I think is obviously linked to the cultural environment. Just to tell you that certainly these effective technologies are not always automatically absorbed in other societies, but I don't know if others also share that, what is probably my own mental connotation. I don't know. Over to you.
Yeah.
May I say something on that? Manuela, I just heard this morning that in France, a country you're very familiar with, drones have also been used to monitor the movements of people and ensure that not too many people gather in the same place. And there were immediately complaints filed formally. And this morning, the Constitutional Court, no less, banned the city of Paris from using drones to monitor the movements of people. It was only in Paris, actually, that it was being used. And they argued that if it was being used in Paris, it could be used in other parts of France, and that there was absolutely no justification for using drones, and beyond which, of course, it was an infringement on people's individual freedoms. So just to buttress your reaction, I think loudspeakers, same thing in France, you know, the connection with a war, with air bombing, alerts, messages from the occupying power, that would certainly not go down well. But it's interesting to understand that in China, the loudspeaker, especially in rural areas, if I understood you correctly, is associated with the traditional authority, and therefore people will listen to the news that is shared via loudspeaker. So it's definitely something that has to do with the not only the culture, I think with a relationship between the citizens and the institutions that govern them, whether at the local level or at the central level. That's my comment.
And thank you for your comment. And yes, I'm pretty agree that broadcasting, especially radios, has some totalitarianism or something like that, things like that, signals in Europe or Western culture. And this one point I must make clear that in China, when I say in a slide that they have a traditional marks of traditional authority, I don't refer to the political authority. I put more stress on the things like rituals, village rituals, family bonds, things like that. It's more like a societal power, something like that. And but also, yes, especially in the World War II, Hitler, Nazi used broadcasting radio to do some for their political aims. It's probably really a scar for people in their cultural memory. Yes. So by take the example of drones or loudspeaker, which has loudspeakers, I mean, government may probably is expected to find a proper medium in their culture, in their society that is centralized with more, powerful mobilization, mobilization energy, things like that. It varies from culture to culture, from country to country. That's my view. Thank you, guys.
May I add something?
Right.
Yes, another thing, just to activate possibly the discussion, because the subject of this discussion is communications in times of crisis. And as a world traveler, I had so many missions. When I came to any hotel in any place in the world, I read what was on the back of the door of my hotel room. And it always said, it's an emergency. Let everybody know that there's an emergency and shout that there is a fire. Look where the door is and let everybody know that there is a fire. If I want to be politically correct and send a nice envelope to each one of the guests in the hotel, possibly they will die before the fire ends. And also, as a former sailor myself, everybody said that I had a change of personality when I was on my boat, when I was walking on land. When you're on your boat, you feel that you're responsible for the people on the boat. And one of the first things that you're trained for, if the boat is going to sink, if the boat is on fire, if there is a problem, let everybody know very soon, very loud, very clear that it's on fire. and that we have to do something. You cannot go to politesse and I'm going to hurt your feelings. Follow my orders because we're on fire, we're sinking. And in Switzerland, from time to time, and I think we did it just like 4 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago, we have alarms that sound all over alarm because it might be an attack, it might be a chemical problem, it might be something. So in times of crisis, you have to be extremely careful of the message, but you have to be extremely clear. I'm a bit surprised of what happened in Paris that Cecile just mentioned, because I think that of course, I'm a supporter of privacy. I'm a supporter of keeping confidential information confidential. But the thing is that we see almost every day on French television that the police in France, they already have cameras in every corner of the street. They have cameras in all metro stations. They have cameras in all highways. They have radars everywhere. And now it's the drones that are bothering them. Wow, they have so many things that I wonder why. And also, I was puzzled. I was hoping possibly for a reaction from Mohan and a confirmation in Singapore, because I understood that you don't only had drones, but you had like mechanical dogs that were walking on the parks, telling everybody, stay apart, stay apart, stay apart, because we were in an emergency. So I don't know. Of course, it's very difficult to keep a balance between the alarm, the urgency, the critical situation that we are, and the respect of human rights. That is really one of the key issues.
Right. Yeah. I'm quite with you. The government is supposed to draw a balance between public security and privacy. Long way to go. And it's my idea that probably the government could choose to disclose the drones, like to introduce public supervision to about how they use the drones, how they use this public media, things like that. Got to talk with you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
May I add something?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, oh, sorry. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. Basically, I would say I agree with Alexandra. Like we should think about the crisis or the emergency when it's in this hard time. If we like focus extremely, still focus on like individual freedom, it can be hard. Thing can be hard. And also, I have 2 small questions. Like not to Haomin, but to Cecile. First, you mentioned about like it's banned to use drone in Paris. I can imagine that how it could be an infringement of freedom. But I would like to know for French, how do they think, like from which aspect they think that the drone, for example, they invade their freedom.
In the French imaginaire, you know, the collective consciousness of the French people, a drone flying above your head is assumed to be either dangerous, threatening, or hostile. It is a perception of the drone being an instrument of mass surveillance. You are absolutely right, Alejandro. Factually, all big French cities have cameras everywhere. The police in France have been particularly active and fining people who were not respecting the orders about social distancing and so on. I do not disagree with that at all. I'm not saying that it is wrong to find specific and to use specific tools to communicate that there is an emergency in a time of crisis. I was just sharing with all of you what the way the use of drones, and it was not the use of drones to share information or to show a banner or something. The drones were used as an auxiliary to the police to enhance their monitoring capacity, and that was resented. The French are extremely sensitive to any hint of Big Brother watching, if you think about the George Orwell novel. So it is a reaction that is fairly widely shared in France. It will take a while, I think, for people to understand that drones can actually be useful instruments. We already know that they can be useful to distribute parcels or things in areas that are very hard to reach. That is known. But generally speaking, the perception is a drone is linked to military, it's linked to surveillance, and it means danger. That's a collective perception in France.
If I may, France is certainly not the exception. Huh? You can extrapolate and copy-paste exactly the same remarks to, as I said, Italy. That was probably the first country trying the drones some 2 months ago at the beginning of the crisis, even well before France. In Spain, you had actually exactly the same reaction. And in the UK, I don't know if they tried the drones, but it's also probably the country where there are more cameras all over the places in Europe. And I can imagine that if you put a drone in the Piccadilly Circus, I mean, you will have exactly the same French reaction. It's only the language that changes, but it's really embedded in the European and I guess also US mindset. I mean, it is linked to some deep connotations applied to loudspeakers and more particularly to drones that we share on over a large geographical, political area.
Mohan.
I don't have much more to add than what both Cecile and Manuela and Alejandra said, because Singapore is extremely small, and there was always a joke that during the Vietnam Wars that if you wanted to attack Singapore, you have to bomb it from Bangkok, otherwise you will miss. So that's how small Singapore is. So drones or no drones really makes no difference here, because people here after the SARS outbreak about 20 years ago don't question this anymore. If the drone is going to save my life, we'll go for it. That's the mentality here. We don't need it because, as Jasmin was saying earlier, the way the information is shared daily in China, that happens in Singapore too. There is a constant update via WhatsApp, the newspapers in the four different languages, the radios, the televisions, the internet, the newsreels. It's constantly there. Plus, very importantly, because it is small, they constantly let you know where new clusters of infections may be formed. And Singaporeans being extremely, it's an affluent society which has become a bit lazy, extremely scared about falling ill. Don't go there. So, it's a natural protection. It works very, very well here. And in terms of drones, you're right. They use friendly looking drones in Singapore, so people don't feel threatened like you mentioned in France and in Spain. We have a dog, actually, a drone that, it's not really a drone, it's like a robot that looks like a dog that goes around the public parks to tell people, if it senses to energy is too close, it goes near them and says, please, and it uses very kind languages. It speaks in English at the moment. They haven't come up with the Mandarin or the Malay or the Tamil version, but I think it'll soon be there. So they're trying to bring about a friendlier dissemination of information, because underlying all of this, as both Haomin and Jasmin are saying, is the seriousness of what is happening right now. There's a tremendous crisis out there that we tend to actually forget after 1 or 2 weeks of the lockdown, because we tend to think, well, it's not so bad as sitting at home. Well, it is still very bad if you're still sitting at home, right? So that's my contribution. Thank you for asking me.
Okay, so does anyone has other comments or questions? So we can move on to the next topic. Is about the technology.
Sorry. I just want to say something about about the comments about put it on Jasmin about the digital divide, like some senior people, some information are not, or have to fall through the net, or they may cost their lives. I think in China there are two ways to prevent that happen. The first one is supplement, just like I showed in my slides, that the supplement of offline work, like community grassroots work, or community workers, volunteers to lay their routine stress on the seniors like that in their area, and actually they can provide some door-to-door service, door-to-door work to prevent them to prevent them to be put in a disadvantage. And the second one is most of the seniors have neighbors or things like that, and they can have some access to the digital world, to the net. And as for our volunteers, once we receive their online SOS messages, we will mark specially on our real-time map, for example. We will mark as red or something thicker than red, or color thicker than red, to show that they are in a special emergency. That probably no children, they don't have children to take care of them, or they are have to be put in outside aid at the distance like that. And it is my view as a volunteer.
I understand John Victor would like to say something.
Yeah, just two things. One, about the reaction of the people in France. France is one of the countries where people less trust their government for handling the COVID crisis. I mean, the rating of the government is incredibly low, and they failed almost on every front. I mean, we had no hospital beds, we had no mask, we had no machine to help breathing, no drugs, etc. But the police had a heavy stock of tear gas they ordered at the time when masks were in shortage, and now they appear with drones. So the reaction of people is also that, well, you'd better help us instead of trying to control and find and repress the population. This is a very, very if one wants to understand how it works, it's very important to realize that networking is not only social, it's also physical. And as was just said, no one is really isolated, right? Elder people at home, they have the community taking care. They come and they help and they bring food, they see what happens, they bring the news, right? And this we don't understand sometimes very well because we have lost this completely in Europe. It does not exist anymore. instead of helping socializing the elder generation, the immediate reaction is to cut them from the world. This is what we did in our retirement homes, for example. The first instinctive reaction was to cut from the outside world. This is not how you inform, really. So it's hard to understand the whole system of providing information to the people in China if you don't bear in mind that communities do exist and they function, right? And every building, I mean, is linked to a community, and this community is efficient. And it was efficient not only to carry the news, but to ensure that protective measures are enforced. And this is a very important difference between China and our respective societies, I feel.
Thank you, Jean-Victor.
Thank you for your sharing about the French experience. I can see that this is a very important point about the different society in different countries, because people's habits and living environment is different. For example, in China, people most live with their families, so they can get information from the young generation, and the young generation also will bring the scientific knowledge to their family, to their parents or grandparents to help them to respond to this pandemic. So we just talked a lot about the technology on the communication, how the technology to help people to get more information from the government, from the press, from the other professional groups, and also another technology the government used to in response to the to collect the data, to share the information. So there are two different kinds of the technologies using. We want to hear more experience from our next speaker, Jean-Léon. She is, you can introduce yourself. I believe you, yeah.
Okay. Hello, bonjour. Good morning, hola, ciao. I think I all time speak the European language to the 大家好 to everyone. And my name is Zhang Liang. I am currently based in Beijing, and finger love for you, everyone. And my background is about the entrepreneurship and the digital transformation. Now today, I would like to share with my lovely PPT with you guys to talk about how China responding to COVID-19 with a tech, because I'm a founder of the two technology companies. So my background used me to tell more about the technology transformation. So let's quickly look at how's the China's behaviors in the last 2 months. As you can see this lovely chart, in the last 2 months, the infection about the COVID-19 is under the control. We believe that the China's government take a lot of very efficiency behaviors. And this is a report by a consulting company called the Edmond Trust. And he gave the government of the trust index from the 26 countries. As you can see, China's government trust became the top ones. So I think from this pandemic, every citizen believe our country did a lot of very successful, outstanding work. And behind of this great achievement, as you can see, our government also is very technology savvy. We can find a lot of the good example using the AI, big data, cloud computing, blockchain, and the 5G. I will give you more examples after that. And I think obviously we all know the IT play a very important role in response of the COVID-19 pandemic, but we need also to take care about the three things. The first one is about reliability, the second one is the safety, and the third one is the fairness. I think we need to build a platform combined with technology company as well as with the government regulations together. So I will give you the first two examples about the AI. And Zhejiang province is a very big province in China. For people who don't know about the Zhejiang CTC combined with Alibaba Damo Academy, and they built the AI-enabled the system could diagnose the COVID-19 in 20 seconds with 96% of the accuracy. You know, in the traditional ways, if you want to diagnose the COVID-19, that normally need longer than 20 minutes and with about 90% of the accuracy. I think from this technology, people will diagnose as quickly as possible. And I will give you another example is about the AI combined with the facial recognition. As you can see in these photos, and it's very common to see it in the some, like the subway station, train station, as well as the airport. In the traditional of the ways, people will give you a visit of the testing your temperatures, and that means will increase the risk of the cross infection. And now, because of the facial recognition combined with VI, so that will take the body temperature in the contact lens reliable and efficiency manners. So sometimes when people just passed by and passed away and they didn't feel any awareness of it. And I also want to share with you something about the big data. I did some research about in China, there are over 90% of people access with the internet right now. So every day when people, no matter they use the smartphone or the internet, they can quickly get the big data, such as, this is very common to say in the China, in many smart platforms about the big data map, and the government will make the accuracy about how many people has been diagnosed, and you can also find who has been diagnosed and how far is it. And this data is very, very important, play a very important role in prediction. And the early warning and analyze this data make a better predictions. And I also want to share with you an example about the cloud computing. Just like us, we talk to each other with the Zoom. So I think the video conference is very, very popular, not just in China, but also globally. And the students, they are studying online. I still remember when I was a primary school student in the 2002, yes. And at that time, China made the pandemic with the SARS. And I was studying at the home, and I was studying, look at the TV every day, and finished my coursework. And I think after this 10 years or 20 years, and China have gained a lot of the experience. So at this time, online teaching will be much efficiency. And I also want to talk about the very smart and the popular technology is blockchains. And because of in China, I think the most people have access with the smartphone and the internet. So normally we will use the WeChat and the Alipay, and they will have a healthy code. So every time when I get from the Beijing to Shanghai, from city A to the city B to the city C, and this data will be tracked, and the blockchain will help us make all this data openness and the transparencies. And I also want to give you an example about the 5G. I know the 5G is very, very hot popular topics in China and in Europe. And the 5G is, in my opinion, I think the 5G isn't a very natural or commercialized project, but China did well in the Huaxingshan and the Lin Xiaonuan hospital buildings, and they make the 5G high definition live broadcasting, and just in the 2 days, and the Vivo existing 490 millions. I think 5G could play a very important role in the future when we meet the pandemic, but at this time we just say about the live. So at this time, I want to say something about the call to action. How did the China's government combined with the technology company to do a better platform? I think there are 6 things about the time limits, use limits, fairness, and the inclusiveness, transparency, accountability, and the oversight. And I'm very happy because in this morning I read a report from the World Bank. They make a report called "The Data Makes Our Life Better." They give a lot of the best examples and how did the government make a good platform or framework. I will recommend it everyone if you have the interested about technology and how to adapting the technology into the government work. You can read that report soon. And I also want to talk something about the China and the European. I think the China has a great appeal technology practice. As you can see, China has a very, very great technology companies. And in my point, and the European has a better fundamental research. It did research work very, very good. And I know some EU technology companies, they are very, very interested about the China's market. So at this time, my point is that I hope the China and the EU will build a strong bridge. They have the more communication, more collaboration to share about their knowledge and building the trust, work together. I think that will make a more successful achievement in the. That's my today's sharing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your sharing. Very excellent sharing. May I ask our guest audience, would you like to raise some questions and comments?
I have a question about 5G. You mentioned that as an example of enhanced technology, and I'm sure you are aware that there is a big controversy that is brewing currently. I would say along 2 lines. One is a general perception that 5G may not be as needed as its supporters say that it is, that it may pose some risks to people's health, and that it is in fact maybe too huge for our needs. And then a related controversy, of course, has to do with the technological advance of China in 5G technology, including, of course, the role played by the company Huawei, which has led to some very bitter and very strong fights between the US and China. So before getting into that, into the controversy around Huawei, I wanted to ask you, you gave us one specific example of the use of 5G, which was used to broadcast live and worldwide how the hospitals were being built and the technology that was installed in the hospitals. So this could be construed or understood almost as propaganda, and I'm putting, commas around the word propaganda. Can you tell us in which other ways 5G is actually contributing to, for example, the fight against the pandemic, or in what way is, in your opinion, 5G technology really indispensable or extremely useful to address that kind of a challenge better than through other technologies?
Thanks so much for your questions. And the first of all, you mentioned about is that the 5G will hurt our health. I think I talked with some of the 5G experts in China and in Norway, and the answer is no, they won't hurt our health. So 5G is a very smart and good and very safety technology. And I also want to tell us about more about the 5G practice in the commercial ways. I think the 5G is also a very new project in China in this COVID-19. I think maybe in the future, because of 5G, their speed is very, very fast, and they can provide the most safety ways. So I think maybe in the future, if we meet the similar way pandemic, that will improve our work's more efficiencies, something like that. Yeah.
Any other question, Kami?
May I? Well, I possibly just jump into Cecile's intervention because I studied mathematics myself, and I did a master's degree in France. And this is prehistoric. There were no dinosaurs around, but it was prehistoric. I was in 1978 in France. And I thought that I was at the top of the world in mathematics and in computing. And computing was going into a freezing room with cards and disks. And I had to make a run and wait for 1 or 2 days to get my results. And then I had something that went wrong in one letter, and then I had to go back. But I was on the top of the science. I was really on the top. Then I joined the ILO in 1990. And I installed myself the computers at the Social Security Department. And I remembered one of my colleagues here in Geneva, in a very developed country, he said, you know, now with the new personal computers, you can open 2 programs at the same time. What? 2 programs at the same time? Yes, one to make calculations or one to write something. Oh my God, and I wonder, I thought, why would I want to open 2 programs at the same time? That's crazy, that's crazy. And now I open Windows, PowerPoint, Zoom, and all the things at the same time. I wonder if the problem of the 5G is a little bit of the inception of it. If it had been born, in California and Silicon Valley, nobody will have any doubt that it's the way of the future. I wonder, because there are many, many concerns that 5G might harm health, but also that it's not secure. So it's a problem of trust of the others. It's not the advantages. I'm sure that young mathematicians and young entrepreneurs as you, Yuan, who are creating computers at your young age, will find some ways of using this new technology in a positive way. I am sure, but I wonder if that is just something that from the beginning it was created in a place that the world is not used things to be created. We all use internet now, but if you ask where is most of our information based, most of our information is based in the United States. In the United States, all that we are doing in every country, it goes to the United States. So I don't have anything against that, but it's a monopoly that rules the rest of the world. But my original question was that you mentioned China as a whole, as a block. And I visited China, I think 6 times, and I always had the impression that there were very sensitive differences between East and West, and between the Euro and the urban sector. So I see that the East and urban side, it's going to the Star Wars, it's going to technology in a very, very high speed, but I wonder how is this distributed in the rest of the country? You're making huge progress, but is it benefiting everybody? Are there plans to reach everybody? Possibly later, Jean-Victor Groix might mention something, because I think it's the spread of social security programs also that have to reach everyone. But are there any big difference in technology, 5G in China, or not?
I think you said very. I totally agree with you because of I think when a new technology comes and all the people they need sometimes to adapt it, to learn it. Just like in the old days, we don't have the internet. Now everyone suits about the internet. When old days, we don't. We learned the knowledge from the website, from the blog. Now we think it's very easy. We think it's a part of our daily life. And the 5G is also very, very new. I think some people, not everyone, for me, I'm still using the 4G smartphone, but I know some of my friends, they are the more technology man, and they are using the 5G smartphone. They are wants to try something very, very new. I think it's need some time to adapt it. And I also agree with you about the East and the West. They have the different culture. And I think talks about the 5G and the Huawei, you can't ignore about the China and the United States, the trade war. Because I'm in China, I heard something about the scandals about that kind of scandal. American people don't believe the 5G because they want to make the trade war much worse, something like that. Yeah. But from my point, I'm support with the 5G technology, but we need to need some time to exercise about that does this technology works out or not. We need some time to examine it. That's my point of view.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So yes.
Can I move to a topic that is being raised in the column on the conversation and the comments that are appearing in parallel to this discussion? And it is the issue of the linkages between technology and governance. And that brings me back to I think it was the first slide that you showed on the trust and the graphs with the countries' level of trust in the governments, which for me is the background of this discussion on linking technology and governance. And I think also there is a dual dimension to that discussion. One thing is to discuss the trust in a government in time of crisis. And another thing is to discuss the trust in general, not only in time of crisis, but both things are linked. And if we go back to that slide, we probably can draw some conclusions in terms of the overall trust of the governments that are shown there that go beyond the crisis. So they show some fundamental weaknesses of trust, not specifically linked to the crisis itself. And within that context also, Mohan is saying, and he's very right here, that the issue of linking technology and government is also linked to the transparency of the government. And again, not only in times of crisis, but in general. And again, that leads to the trust issue. From our very, very probably distorted European point of view, like we were discussing minutes ago regarding the drones, we do not have the image in the social networks, in the European press in general, that the Chinese government is particularly transparent in general and during the crisis. So I don't know how if you perceive this issue from your perspective. Certainly it is a very clear perception here in Europe. It may be wrong, but this is what you receive in terms of messages coming from the news. There is a lack of transparency. So I just wanted to flag this issue of transparency, trust, governance, technology. Everything is linked far beyond the crisis itself. I don't know. I would like to know your own feelings on that.
Honestly, I think China compared with the European, with the United States, the government transparency is a little bit lower. I think our China need a long time or maybe more steps to make all the information are more transparency, more reliable, that the people could much easier to access that kind of the data. And I also agree with you. I think the transparency, accountability, and building the trust is not just in the pandemic. It's also in the everyday. But in these times, I think the government make the regulations more loose, so that in China much technology company can access of the data from the public much easier, and in the same time, and the China's government access the technology data from the technology company also much easier. I think after the pandemic, the government maybe need the more deeply thought about how to use how to analyze, how to make a regulation about these data.
Victor.
Yes, one thing about transparency is the fact that you may very well end up in a situation where multiple layers of transparent glass leads to obscurity. In France, we have, I don't know if one could say that our government is transparent, but at least the government is talking, but it's talking so much that no one knows what really the government is thinking, because you have different layers of intervention which contradict each other. And in terms of crisis, it might be better to have one voice, that this voice is authoritative, and that then people have at least one source to rely upon. Now the difference is between crisis and non-crisis, and of course what is workable in difficult times maybe should not be working in the same way when things become back to normal, I would say. Now that's one thing. My main point to raise in this, the context of this presentation, is about technology. Some 25 years ago, when I was visiting the United States, I was amazed at noticing how backwards these people were for computerization in real life. I mean, you still, when you were going, having the bus, you needed to have a quarter to come on the bus to put in the slot, right? This type of thing. I mean, it was, I felt, how can they be so powerful and so backwards? And at that time, as Alejandro, right, we really felt Europe, and including my country, we were at the top of the world. Now, when I am in China and I come back to France, I just feel, how can it be that we have become so backwards in terms of technology? And it's not because of COVID, or it's not in times of COVID. I mean, our lack of suitable level compared to China in terms of day-to-day use of technology pre-existed, right? Alejandro mentioned about social security. That's our field, right? And when you go to a Chinese hospital, it's incredible how simple it is to make an appointment, to pay your bills, to get your drugs delivered, etc., etc. It's amazing. I mean, in France, to have an appointment to a hospital, it's painful. I mean, it's very, very difficult. You cannot access the specialists. You have to queue, but people go up over your head, etc. It's extremely complicated. Whereas in China, it works. I mean, it works simply. And the question about is it now expanded to the whole of the country? I mean, to my knowledge, it works. It works the same. I mean, you have, you know this technology, for example, for renting bicycles and everywhere and leaving them where you want. It's not only Beijing. I mean, you have many cities of China which have this type of technology, whereas in France, we could not even introduce it. We are still fighting in France to have the APP for COVID tracing, right? Not because people are reluctant, just because they don't know how to do. They cannot, right? They wanted to do it by themselves and they are stuck somewhere. They cannot do something which is friendly to every type of computer. Just as if in a country like China, they didn't have, everyone had iPhones. No, not at all, right? Not everyone has iPhones, not everyone has Huawei or whatever other brand, but you are not discriminated against because you have a different brand of cellular phone. So our technological people would really have a lot to learn about China and using of technology in real world. And concerning 5Gs, I mean, I don't know about you in Geneva, because Geneva is very modern, but in our remote area of Brittany, we experienced some difficulties in internet access during the time of confinement. Right? We are not capable, even this, to secure enough access to data for the whole, when everyone needs to access data. So, be it only for this, I think 5G would be extremely useful. Now, who feels threatened with new technologies in terms of governments? Well, that's not a surprise, let's say. That's not a surprise. But this, what is a surprise for me at least, is how easily our Western government would follow the bad examples of other powers criticizing China for their own agenda without trying to take advantage of how advanced China has become and how useful this advancement could be for all of us.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, I think the technology is very convenient for the Chinese people in our daily life. One of my friend, he didn't using the catch for 3 years in China. And one of my friends also shared a very interesting story to me. One day he take a road trip. She wants to introduce Alibaba to the British people, and they just showed him a photo. That means a homeless people in China in the street, that they didn't want any coins or any cash. They just provided the QR code. So if you want to donate some money to me, just scan the QR code. That's a good example about the mobile money in China. I think the 5G and other some smart technology, they need some time to test to make sure it's very trustworthy and reliable to our daily life. It needs some time, but I'm very happy to be a part of working in the technology industry, because we believe the tech for good, tech would make our life in a better place.
Just to add to what was said by Jean-Victor and others, only part of the explanation of the differences in the mindsets between European and Chinese attitude regarding technology. Part of the explanation, I think, is also because of the aging of the population, that in Europe is obviously elder on average by far than in China. And well, let's face it, our generation was not educated in technology advanced. Well, even internet is still very new for us. As Alejandro was saying, I still remember myself also the first computer in a freezing room, in a huge freezing room, and waiting for days for a result. I mean, So this is our education, and it is our generation that is still holding power in our societies in Europe. So there is this aging factor. It's certainly not the whole story, obviously not. I mean, the society and the culture behind it, as we said before, is also a matter that really is very important. But let's not forget that we are senior, you are millennials. So.
May I add one more thing here? I've lived in Geneva too for a very long time, and I still do. I traveled between Singapore and Geneva. When I left Geneva to come back to Singapore because I retired, I want to give you an anecdote of how slow things are. It took me less than 48 hours to register myself in Singapore when I returned after 40 years. Less than 48 hours, I was in the system. They told me to wait a week. That same night, I got an email that said I was in the system. My social security, everything came through in less than 48 hours. It took me 10 months to check out of Geneva. It took me 10 months to check out of Geneva because there was no automation of the processes whatsoever between the United Nations office and the pension fund and whatever. It took 10 months. I also want to say that I think within the European societies, it is wrong to maybe categorize all of them as backward. I think what the problem seems to me, having lived there and here, is that in the Chinese and in the Asian societies like China, like Singapore, like Thailand, the infusion and adaptability of technology is becoming a daily occurrence. I mean, unless you live quite far in the city, like Jasmin was saying, you don't. But in cities, this is part of your life. You walk into a hospital, things get done. You don't have to repeat your medical history all over again. It's all there. Whether you walk to this hospital or that hospital, that medical data is shared so that it makes your life easier, the doctor's life easier too, to come to an analysis for you. I think that is what is not happening in Europe. There are centers of excellence, like Joan was saying. The fundamental research is quite very good there, but it is not infused out into the society. It stays where it is. It's printed in beautiful languages here and there, and it's shared all over the world. But in terms of its applicability and usability, I mean, you want to make your life easier and not more frustrating, and that is where these technologies come in. So I'm surprised that people in Europe still sit back. I mean, there's so many fears about surveillance. There's also fears about this, it's about that. I think it is just a lack of a system that doesn't put this together for the society. This is what is missing, I think, in Europe. This is available easily in China and in Singapore, but it is not quite there in Europe. So you have aspects of technology brilliance in Europe, but it's not linked. There's so many gaps. Sorry, I have to share that.
Great. I think that China and the Europeans need some more conversations, more dialogue, just like today's. We can share our knowledge, our experience together and make these things happen much easier in a better ways.
Of course, this gives food for thought for many things. And I relate this to my life as social security expert. My main problem in most countries is that the ministers change every 2, 3, or 4 years, that the president change every 4 or 5 years, and that the best way to change from one president to move from one president to the other was criticizing and burning everything that was done before. So there, to me, there's also a matter of trust in Western countries, because governors, those who are leading the countries, in many countries, they don't have any experience. If you just see just now the age, how many years of governing and with success out in many countries, You can see in the United States, I think it's reaching its third year of experience. In Mexico, which is really very down in the curve, is 18 months and nobody trusts him. In France, where was the president before he was elected? What did he do? He didn't have a party. He has no great experience. He's a very talented man, but he has not political experience and not government experience. In most countries, governments are very young and there's no continuity between one government and the others. So I'm 100% for democracy, but democracy has shown that people elect those who are against something, no, those who are for, and not necessarily the best or the more competent. So society prizes success, and China has been successful, has assured continuity. And when I was in France doing my studies, China's economies was not even in the first 20 economies. And now, in my lifetime, it's the second largest economy in the world because they have ensured some security. Of course, it has its costs and it has its things, but I think that now the governments and which are linked to the issue of trust and trust that the governments accept and trust that the governments promote, it's linked to the adjustment that has to be done in societies to assure some continuity. But I'm afraid that now in Europe to move forward, it takes months and years, or it takes no time. Now even opening the borders from the COVID-19, there is a huge scene. There's already Germany and Austria that are trying to do things on themselves without inviting Italy. And Italy says, well, if you do that between the European Union, why are we in the European Union? So I think governments in most countries are very young and young in terms of experience. And that shows in the relation with the trust and technology. And we're paying for it.
Brilliant.
Hi guys. Yeah, this is where I just jump into this dialogue, and just want to speak something of my personal opinions, because I heard so much from you guys, and I really heard a lot of opinions from different aspects and different angles from you. And for me, actually, I want to express myself just for some aspects, especially when we talk about the Chinese government in the transparency to the COVID-19. Okay, so first, I don't think that today we're going to talk about, we're going to debate on the two governance system, whatever the communism system or the democratic system, because at least I think, you know, the system, whatever is communism or the democracy, it doesn't fit for everywhere in the world. For example, I'm now in Africa, I'm now in Zimbabwe, but I don't think the democracy here works very good. You can imagine how corruption of the governments here in Africa, whatever in Zimbabwe or other countries in Africa. So it doesn't mean that democracy works everywhere. And I think what today we are going to talk about is how the governments around the world do their solutions in response to the COVID-19, this kind of new virus, this kind of unknown virus, which caused the pandemic of global, you know, this kind of global pandemic. And I think that for the, well, every time when we talk about the transparency, whatever China or other countries, I think we should realize that, you know, in the face of the showing up of the unknown virus, the unknown pandemic, no one knew about it before. So for each country, whatever China or other countries, it takes time to make sure, to confirm this is a new virus. You cannot say that, oh, I found this is this is a pandemic which showed the symptom of flu, but we say it's a new virus, and we say that it is highly infective. We have to take a long procedure to make sure that is the truth. Then we can announce it to the public. I think that is why China takes a bit time, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, to confirm this is the real case. And I think at the end of December last year, China already announced, at least at the beginning, maybe not Chinese national government, but the Wuhan city government already announced it, that they already found an unknown reason, flu or whatever. And then they also reported to the WHO. And also, when later on the issue between mainland China and Taiwan, also the issue, the Taiwanese government even emailed to WHO to ask whether this is a real thing happened, and which also caused some kind of debate, saying that the Taiwanese government is questioning that mainland China is not doing the right thing. So actually, China already announced the situation at the very beginning of the pandemic. And also the WHO also announced it globally. And even America, they were the first country who withdraw the American citizens in China. But you see that from January until April, America announced their state as the national, emergency status. So I don't think that, transparency can be the key issue of owning Chinese problem, because whatever which country who was the first one to face the COVID-19, they will take a lot of time to issue it, handle it. And I think as the community of the shared future, as we are all humankind, we should think about how to unite together. That's why we have this kind of conversation. We try to communicate how do we use the technology the best in face of the new emerged pandemic or whatever other diseases. This is what we should discuss about. That's it. Thank you.
Can I just, as a reminder, quote again the title of this conversation, the topic that we selected all together, which is the quality of the communication between the government and the population in time of crisis, and to exchange experiences and perspectives around what sort of communication. And if you followed the conversation since the beginning, precisely we ended up with a political discussion which I think cannot be delinked from the topic of communication. And the political discussion is, well, in China you had a better quality of communication also because of the political background that goes beyond the crisis itself, while in Europe we are still fighting and laughing at the utilization of a drone because our perspective is different beyond the crisis. So unfortunately, I do not think that we can delink the kind of regime that we have to the kind of communication that we have in crisis and out of the crisis. But again, I would invite you to listen to the whole conversation since the beginning, and you will be surprised to what extent we Europeans are extremely critical of our own European regimes, communications, leadership, whatever is the label, as compared to the facilities that are given in China because of a different, precisely, regime and leadership. So then it's up to each one of us to take our own conclusions according to our own convictions. But certainly in Europe, we are extremely perplexed more and more about the efficiency of our own democratic regime. And this is what Alejandro just said just minutes ago, just before your your comment. I just wanted to flag that. And just one last question, which you are not obliged to reply, also because we are running a little bit out of time, is I wonder always, from you as Chinese citizens, how much do you know about the news that we in Europe, in the US, in general, in the world, what we receive in terms of the images of China, again, during the crisis and beyond the crisis? Are you aware of the kind of discussions that we are having here regarding China's policies from our own perspective? I know it's a sort of game with mirrors, but I just wonder to what extent you're informed about what we Western people receive as information regarding your country. Over to you, and thank you to everybody if I cannot say thank you in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of, sorry.
Yes.
In terms of what Hui just mentioned and what Mrs. Totona say, and I have one point to add. As we know, oceans of raw data about the epidemic are recorded every day with varied visibility. And I reckon that some politicians, when some politicians rebuke China government for doctoring statistics or something like that, they ignore the complexity of data and the further practical problem, because different ways, we say modus operandi of calculation leads to different results based on different definition of specific variables, and some operational factors such as the supply of nucleic acid testing kits may bring restrictions as well. And therefore, it is my view that the major challenge we face is probably not bureaucratic monopoly of the information, but in the sense the global consensus about certain fields of statistics. And so it probably is not a problem of transparency, I say that we cannot put all the reasons or causes responsibilities on the political side of government, but it's probably a scientific matter in these issues. That's my view.
Okay. Maybe I also want to add something here. I heard a lot of discussions and I found very interesting topics, especially about the technology used in governance. I consider it could be a whole systematic change, especially for the European political system, because you have very democratic system. You need the political elections, and the elections relates to the social media a lot. So if in Europe people all use the technology, or realize or see the mobile phones as their part of daily life, so absolutely the political election will shift to the power of social medias. So afterwards, the companies will be the most powerful institution in actors in the society. But in China, the situation is a little bit different because China has a strong government. Even the private sectors can provide many public functions, but it is the supplement of the Chinese governance. So in this part, it could be very important difference here. Maybe I'm wrong. I just want to provide for discussion. And today it's already on time that we have a very interesting discussions. Maybe who want to give the last conclusion for this meeting?
Well, if you allow me, I think we had a very interesting intergenerational, intercultural discussion. I'm very happy to have so very young and talented participants, and also my senior colleagues in Europe and in Singapore. I think it was a very rich discussion. We spent 1 hour and 44 minutes till now. And I think we could spend more time if we were together and having something to drink and eat together. Well, in any case, thank you very much, Tingyu Yang, Cecile, Jean-Victor, Mohan, and Manuela for your participation, but very especially to Yuan, Haomin Zhang, and Jasmin Jia for their excellent presentations. They were very motivating, and they highlighted and illuminated the discussion. Thank you very much to IO Talent. I hope that we will continue in contact. I think during this confinement period, we can have more sessions like this. We can program them and discuss. And hopefully when the confinement is over, you will be able to come to Geneva. And as we spoke, we would also love to go to China when the conditions are good. So I think it's great that we keep in touch. We have been in 4 different years in touch, and we're very happy with the collaboration. Thank you very much. I wonder if anybody else would like to say something.
Thank you, Ginger. I would like to please allow me to add my thanks. And firstly, for our audience, also presenters, thank you for joining us. And you're all voluntary, but you prepare a lot. And I really feel like even proud of my country after your introduction. And also, of the most thank I will say to Manuela and Ginger to help us to make this additional GREYTalk for us. And yes, we will definitely welcome you in Beijing. We all would welcome you after this pandemic pass away. And also thank you for all seniors. Yes, I think for our Chinese, instead of speaking loud continuously, would better know what others think about us and to have dialogue. Yes, thank you all.
Thank you very much. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
Well, have a great evening wherever you are in the world. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Also thank Tingyu for
Bye.
hosting this.
Bye.